Hello, everybody. Welcome back. It is time for another kick-ass career conversation. I am Kim.
I'm Louise.
And today we
And
have
I'm Doug.
joining us Doug. Yay! Doug, we will tell the world a little bit more about you in just a minute, but we want to start this week how we start every week. What are we celebrating, friends?
I am celebrating community today. I had the opportunity to get together with other career development professionals here in Winnipeg last night, and it was fantastic being surrounded by folks who light up when we talk about geeky stuff that probably nobody else would light up about. But it's nice to have that community of people that know something that you're putting out into the world, and we're all doing good and we're working really hard trying to bring empowerment and connection and engagement to the world. And so it was fun and really grounding too. And I love to be a part of that here in the city and in the province and in the country too. So that was fantastic. Yes, yay. Doug, what are you celebrating today?
That's a tough question for me. I don't celebrate.
Oh, and yet we're here going to talk about happiness. How do you have happiness without celebrating?
Well, I think that's the interesting part, and so that's why I love sharing it. So maybe my celebration is that I'm on this podcast with you gals, and I'm able to share this information with folks out there who might not have heard it. So maybe that's my celebration. But I'm not a celebrator, but that's just me. I'm not knocking anybody else who loves to celebrate their wins. So,
I celebrate anything and everything. Like I do. I love to celebrate. Today I'm celebrating dreams coming to fruition. So for a very long time, probably 18 plus months, I've had an idea, and it's been an idea that's been percolating, and kind of like bits and pieces have come together. And over this past week, all of a sudden it's alive. And it's very exciting to give birth in this way and to have dreams come into fruition. So more on that later. But I'm just excited about what is being created and how it can be there to support people in all sorts of ways. So that's what I'm doing. Doug, I'd love to introduce the world to you a little bit more. So if you don't mind, we have a little bio here about you. So after years of working as a project engineer and product engineering manager, Doug knew it was time to go after his passion to help and teach others. After an obsession to get himself better, he put his knowledge into trainings and courses, and now he helps more people than ever before. People ask why he would leave his successful engineering career to teach. Simple, he wants to share the joy and fulfillment of an exciting career with as many people as possible. Today, Doug guides people to find their career success. He helps people who think work should supplement life, not overrun it, and learn to be happy in their 9 to 5 so they can be happy in their lives. Doug, we are so glad that you're here with us today.
Yeah, same. Like I said, that's my celebration.
Yay.
I love that. What was that moment in time like for you when you knew you needed to make a change?
Yeah, that's a great question. It was pretty much like the worst job I'd ever had. Like the culture was awful. Some of the folks that I worked around were I didn't align with them very well. And so I think it was just kind of being pushed into that hellscape that actually made me kind of open up and realize that something needed to change. Up until that point, I had been at a lot of good companies, a lot of good people, a lot of good teams. And so maybe it was just too easy, and maybe I just didn't realize like there could be something bad on the other end. And when I did get into that bad situation, I think that was really that was the time where it started to kick in, where it's like, okay, this kind of sucks and I need to do something about it. And so maybe that's my background as engineering. I want to solve problems and I want to try and figure it out. And so that's what I did. And what I really came around to was an alternate idea that I think a lot of people don't really talk about so much. And that's what I love to share with my clients. And that's what I, get excited about when I'm on a podcast like this one, to where we can actually share a little something that's a little bit different that maybe some people hadn't really thought about. And so I got to see that in action when I was actually trying to make it happen in that horrible culture. Other people were feeling the same feels, and they came to me for help. So I kind of realized, like, one, that there was something here that other people could use my help. And then two, that it was working, because not only was I getting positive feedback, the folks that I was helping were getting positive feedback as well. So it kind of all just kind of came together in basically what I would call hell. And so, I guess you learn a lot more in hell than you do in heaven. And so here we are.
Yeah. Sometimes, like that is true, because we're pushed to a place that we know isn't comfortable, and we realize it's not what we want. Um, when you think about, I love both of you kind of talked about idea babies, right? And that sometimes we have this like thing inside us, and we're kind of like poking and prodding and trying to figure it out. Um, how do you get an idea from your head out into the world? Because it's really what Kim, you even kind of highlighted in your intro today. How do we do that? How do we make that happen?
Yeah, that's a great question for a product engineering manager and a project manager. But at the same time, it's really about just taking the steps to actually get it out there. I think a lot of folks, maybe they think it to be overwhelming, but when you actually just walk through the steps to deliver. So you have your idea. So that's kind of that brainstorming, kind of toll gate number one in kind of project management terms. But then you got to go out and just kind of check around to see if it's working. So, let me know, Kim, if that's something that you've done too, because you said in our opener that like 18 months and you're getting ready. Is that something that you've done where you've asked people and kind of prodded people and talked to them to see if it was a good idea? From there, if it is a good idea, then you start piecing it together. You start putting it together. You got to get it down on paper. To your point, like, if it's an idea baby, well, eventually that baby needs to come to fruition. It comes out, it's in the world. You can hold it, touch it. It's yelling and screaming. It's doing things. And I think that's the same thing with your product, that once you get an idea that, hey, it's coming and this could work, then you just need to actually physically make it, get it down on paper, get it into, some sort of idea tree, some sort of mind map, those kinds of things. And then you just kind of keep building and building and building. It's similar to maybe some Lego, and you're building Lego, and it may not look like what it's supposed to look like in the end, but you just keep putting that brick on one at a time, and eventually you get something cool and put on your shelf. So that oversimplification of project management, but
it works, right? It works. And so it, just to take this metaphor just a little bit further. So we have this brain baby, right? So it's gone through gestation. It's gone through that period of time where we have felt it growing within us. We have experienced, right, it on one level, and now here it is in the world. And as a parent, I will say there's a lot of mixed emotions when that thing comes into the world, right? There's a whole lot of oh shit, and there's also a lot of joy and happiness that comes with it. And because this episode today is the happiness equation, how do we go from that place of, and I'm going to use it to say kind of like imposter syndrome of, okay, now we've brought this into the world, and oh shit, is this really what people want, to this place of happiness and joy, right? How do we stay in that place, or how do we utilize that place to continue to allow this brain baby who's now in the world to be nurtured, nourished, and grow?
yeah. And I think one of the things that I really focus on is the social aspect of it. So as I mentioned earlier, when we like think about bringing this brain baby to fruition, we're talking to a lot of people. And so we're asking them, do you think this would be a good idea? Would you utilize this? Do you think that this could be something that could benefit you in your life? That should be the indication that what we're doing is very social. I think a lot of times, especially over the last maybe 20, 30 years, we've been getting very individualized. We've been focused on who we are as people. We've been focused on our idea as something that needs to get out there. But what I think we have to realize is that we're actually dealing with folks, that we're dealing with people. So in your example, if we're building a product or we're building a company, those products and companies do not actually have anything to do with the world unless there are people who want them. So, Apple sells computers. Well, they can't sell a computer without people who want them. And they can't make the computer without people who are actually building the computer, designing the computer, and writing the software. So I think that's where this happiness equation starts to fall in, is when we start to understand that other people are involved, that we can start becoming a little bit more happy because we can start to get them involved with their emotions, with their understanding and their input. Again, like going back to the whole idea of this new product, if their input is negative, are you really going to build that product? And so to Kim's point, like there's mixed emotions, like, oh no, this is kind of weird and gooey, and I don't know if I want to put this out there. But if you're talking to more people and they're saying, yes, I'm using this. Yes, this is awesome. Yes, this has changed my life. Now we're saying, okay, all right, so this is a thing. And yes, it is good that I put this out into the world. And yes, I like, this is exciting now. So I think a big part of something that maybe we've missed over the last few decades is the fact that we're actually here to help each other and to come together as a team of human beings. And if we think about that, I think it leads us to happiness, but it also leads us away from that scary place.
So I'm just going to say back how I heard that based on my non-engineering brain. Okay. Because very different energy here, right? So the way that I heard that is we need humans. And humans allow us to celebrate, to express joy, to be happy together, to allow us to feel something outside of that isolation of that can sometimes come from that place of creation, whatever that is, whether it's creation for a project, creation for a product, creation of a business, creation of a piece of art, that usually is very solitary. And yet when we have that opportunity to engage with and be part of humanity, that is where we have a little bit more of this opportunity to lean into happiness. Not that we necessarily need other people for happiness. That is just a way that we can experience that beingness together. So those are how I would put those words that you said. I don't know. Did that land?
It landed with me.
Cool.
And I appreciate that, because again, the engineering mind in me is always analyzing and tinkering and all of that kind of stuff. And hearing you say it back, you did a much better job than I might have. But also, I really appreciated what you said, coming from a different point of view. So that was great. And from my standpoint, what does Louise think?
I was going to say, Louise.
Well, yeah, and I'm here and I'm listening to you put that out into the world, and I start to think, like, career wise, like when we're in a place that's crunchy and hard and we don't know what to do, we often try to think our way through it.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a solitary act, and it is just not effective. I don't know anybody that's thunk their way through a problem ever. We experiment, we fall, we get up, we look for someone to pick us up, we look for someone to push us forward or hold us back. We need this external environment full of things in order to know where it is that we want to go, because we create these stories in our heads that just aren't true. We need to test it. We need to get it out there. We need to validate these are all Doug words, but they're Kim words too, because we need that kind of feedback. And it's not like we're looking for, like, I'm going to use air quotes for everyone in podcast land. We don't need external validation, but we need to test our ideas outside of our heads. And that's what came to mind when both of you were talking, is like, yeah, we do. We get stuck and we try to think our way through something, and it's just not the way it works. We think it works that way, but it doesn't.
So I'm curious, when we're talking about, so we've really been talking about like what we're bringing into the world, right? And so many people who are listening in, they're like, but how does that relate to me? Right? If I own a business, maybe I get it. But for anybody who doesn't own their own business, how do we get this back for people to be able to actually internalize it for themselves if they maybe don't feel like they're bringing something into the world?
Oh, I think that's a great question, because first I think we need to realize that we all bring something into the world. Do we not? So, I mean, I work with a lot of managers and leaders, project leads, people managers, that kind of stuff. But I also work with a lot of individual contributors. So there are folks who really love their career and they just want to kind of keep doing the thing that they're doing. They're either at a desk or they're out in, the machine shop or something like that, and they're just kind of plugging and chugging away at a design or at a new tool or at a new some supply chain type of stuff. So, but those people are producing as well. Like, of course we're producing. Like, if you're producing a new design that you're going to hand off to the project lead or to the project team, that element of that design or that element of that project is super important. It needs to be well crafted. It needs to have high quality. You need to do your job really well. And so to think that you're not bringing something into this world, I think we need to start there, is, really realize that you are bringing something into the world. I mean, even if you're a parent, yes, you might have physically brought something into the world, but after that, you're also bringing this person into the world, and you're helping this person learn. You're helping this person to grow. You're helping educate this person. I mean, all of these things are contributions that anybody is going to offer the world. So to think that, like, just because you're not making a product, you're not contributing, that I'm saddened to hear that. So I would push everybody to really think and say, hey, what is it that I add to the team? What is it that just even then, like brainstorming, you're adding ideas. Even this podcast, we're all kind of contributing to the questions that each one of us are asking. Those are all contributions, and they're all super important. I don't know. What do you guys think?
100%. And I believe that when we start to feel that things, I call it crunchy, right? Or itchy, or when things aren't flowing in a way that we feel like we're contributing, that's when things really start to, I think, take a turn. When we actually are now misaligned. I think it's a basic human instinct for us to be putting something out into the world in whatever way that is. We put out a word, a song, we put out, right? We make a difference. We put a ripple in a pond. And when we are at a job or in a business where we can't feel that any longer, that's when things start to get crunchy. And it gets hard to find our way through, because we're misaligned somehow, and we lose that connection with that what we really want to be doing, what we really want to be putting out into the world.
So you use terms like misaligned, crunchy, itchy, right? Sad. It's sad, right? Doug, you were saying it's sad. You feel bad that somebody would feel that way. We're supposed to be talking about the happiness equation. So, right. But I think to get to that place of what is the equation for happiness, there is inherently, we need to understand what is that is it that's causing us to maybe not feel that way? Because my guess is people tune into this because they want to hear, well, what is that equation? How do I get there? How do I get to that place of happiness? And so what I'm hearing both of you say, and what I also agree with is there's belonging, there is worth, there is value that we all provide in the world. Would you agree, or do you have other elements that might go into that equation, right? So I just profit. Well, God, I just lost the word. I'm sorry. See, live. I just put out this idea of value, worth, belonging. What else would add to that equation for happiness?
So I think one of the biggest things that a lot of folks forget about is self-efficacy, is how effective we are. So a lot of times we look at something as far as self-esteem. And so we see ourselves as something that is of worth, or of, our emotions within and how we see ourselves. We can spin that around and look at our self-efficacy and look at how effective we are at helping people. And going back to something that Louise said as well, as when we talk to managers and we talk to leaders, this is something that's really important for them as well with their teams, is to bring that out, is to say, here's how you are contributing. Talk to your employees and talk to your team and ask them if they think they're contributing. But then if not, how are they contributing? What are they contributing to the team? And I believe that then leads into more of that happiness. It's like, oh yeah, I do have value. Like, work can get really boring and work can get really repetitive. And I think that's, again, sorry, Kim, going down the path of sadness. But if work is getting very boring, then we can get very sad because we don't think we're contributing, or we don't think our worth is there because we're just putting out another design, or we're just filling in the code again, or we're just updating the errors. But when we can actually say, hey, I've contributed this. And so the word there is self-efficacy, is that I am effective. I fixed this code. I built this design. And so again, it's more of it's in that social psychology realm of thought, to where our coworkers come around together and we help boost each other up and say, hey, I really appreciated that you fixed that bug in that code the other day because it made my job easier. Or I really appreciate you got that design on time because I was able to order it on time and it got delivered on time, and now I get to test it on time. And if we can show that you have an effect, a positive effect on all the downstream stuff of the project or of your work, or if within your family life. And I think we kind of don't talk about that as much. Again, I think we kind of individualize and we kind of internalize too much. And so we're happy, but we don't tell people that we're happy. Or we are, we're saving time, or we're being efficient, or we left work early, and we don't tell people how happy we are about that. And maybe that goes back to, even my example where I didn't have anything to really celebrate, is that I don't focus on that celebration. But when you can actually look at that and share those things, again, we go back to that social intelligence and social psychology, to where we're sharing those positive outcomes. I mean, I think that's where we can have that self-efficacy of saying, hey, I'm actually effective in what I'm doing in my life, in my family life, in my relationships, in my coworkers, and that type of thing.
So I'm hearing two parts here. I'm hearing self-efficacy, self being self, like great me.
Like self.
Self. But then I'm also hearing, but I need other people so that I can validate my self-efficacy, that I'm right in feeling effective. Like, am I hearing that correctly?
Maybe that is what I said. So I won't knock how you heard it, but I will take the opportunity to maybe adjust it. Cool. The self-efficacy is something that we need to look at and say, am I effective? Is this a positive outcome? On the flip side, then we need to share that with other people to show them that they have self-efficacy. So it's not so much that you're getting validation from other people back, because that's the self-efficacy, is that I can do this and I'm doing great and I can produce this part of the project. But then you need to share that with other people so that they can then own their self-efficacy. So again, going back to the example, so if I get a project done on time, right, that would show me as a project lead that I had self-efficacy and that I was effective at getting this project on time. But if I share that with all the people that built up all of the designs and tested and bought the supply chain, I can then share that with them so that they can have self-efficacy. Oh, Doug got his project done on time. The team did. But Doug shared that he got his project done on time because I was able to get all my supply chain stuff done on time. I was able to get my designs done without any errors. And so the self-efficacy is that internal reflection, but we need to share our wins and we need to share our thanks so that people can practice their self-efficacy.
So sharing the gratitude, i.e. paying it forward. Okay, cool. Thanks for tweaking that a little bit so I could understand and hear that part of it. I appreciate that.
Well, no, thank you for telling me how you thought about it so that I could tweak it. Because yeah, we want to get the message across and we don't want it to kind of come out confusing. That's again a self-efficacy bit, right? We just kind of played out the example there.
Yeah. So I want to add to that just a little bit, just very personally. Do you consider yourself a happy person?
I do. Yes.
What makes you happy?
It probably comes back to my self-efficacy, being effective in what I'm shooting for, in what I'm planning out, what my goals are. Mm-hmm. And maybe again, going back to our intro of where I didn't have the celebrations, because I'm always kind of, me personally, I'm always kind of inching towards a new goal or a new task or something new to do. And so I'm kind of putting behind me all the things that I was successful on and kind of moving towards the new thing that I haven't accomplished quite yet. But that's where that comes from. My happiness comes from that. And a lot of research actually shows that our happiness comes from flow and our focus. So I think his name is Daniel Gilbert. He's done a lot of research on happiness, and that's where that kind of came from, is a talk with him, to where he's focused on flow. And when we get into that flow zone, we can be pretty happy. And so I think that's probably where my happiness comes from, is where I'm focused on my goals. I'm accomplishing those goals. I'm failing at some of my goals, but because they're my goals and because I'm so focused on the flow, I believe that that's kind of where a lot of my happiness comes from, is that focus on the things that I want to accomplish.
Yeah,
no. I want you to answer that question. Do you consider yourself a happy person?
Absolutely.
Well, why?
It's not. I think those are two different questions.
Yeah. Well, yes, it was a follow-up question to the first question.
But I think they have two different answers. Like, I can't answer both of them with one answer, because you asked me if I consider myself a happy person. And for me, that connects to my values, especially around the value of optimism, kindness, curiosity. When I'm living my values, I feel like I embody happiness. Doug, you had the beautiful word, right? Like, it feels flow, it feels ease. Those are all things that come out of me when I am in my values. And I believe now, most of the time, I'm there. When I'm not, I know when I'm misaligned. But I consider myself, like, coming back to that and really embodying that is a big piece of who I am. What makes me happy? All kinds of things make me happy. That's only part of it, right? Like, that's big, deep stuff that makes me happy. I also love to laugh. I love to be in a place where I get to laugh all the time. And that too makes me happy. But none of it's in a silo, right? Like, Doug, you're talking about, and you keep coming back to this idea of like where there's a social aspect to what we're talking about today. And for me, even though I'm shy and introverted, I am happy when I'm with people and we laugh and we have a good time. There's part of that feedback that we get. Not a validation necessarily, but like a it's a share of the energy that we have that really makes me happy. But generally, I think I'm a fairly optimistic person, and when I can be optimistic, like, it's kinda happiness to me.
Well, it leads into that place of values, right? And that was one of the things that I had kind of proffered up is this idea of value. Like we're providing value, but we're also living in our values. And Doug, you had said self-efficacy. That's not something that would land in my values, but I can hear how much you do value self-efficacy and why that generates itself as your happiness equation. And Louise, yours is different, but you both come to that place of finding flow, of finding that place where there's
Mhm.
ease, right? And ease is going to look different for all of us. And I think that's the other thing here is when we talk about flow and ease, they're buzzwords, right? They're everybody wants to talk about these things these days. And yet, I think what we so often forget is that that is a very individual experience that we have of it. And so the way Doug is explaining what flow looks and feels like for him is different from how Louise experiences it, which is different from how I experience it. And it's different how it comes to us. And that's what's really cool is with that equation that we're talking about, each of us gets to build it. And yet the building blocks that I hear all of us coming up with are our values.
Yeah. And however we feel it, however we build it, when you say that word happiness or what makes you happy, like we feel it. Like it's a feeling that we all share. Now it might feel different in my body than Doug's body than Kim's than yours. Like it might it might live in a different place, but we can immediately connect to it. And we can say, oh yeah, I know I'm happy when I have that in my body, right? When I have that on my face, when I have that in my eyes, like I think that connects us all too. Is that although it might come to us differently, it might feel different in our bodies, like we all have a connection that we feel that happiness or joy or whatever you want to call it.
Well, and I think I just want to add in very quickly, and then I'll stop talking for a minute, is that this idea of happiness, though, not everybody knows what it feels like. There's a lot of people, there's many of my clients that show up and say, I don't really remember what happiness feels like. And I've been there, right? Where it's really hard to remember what happiness feels like. And so all of this that we're talking about is work that we've done, right? Even in the bio that I read about Doug, you did your own work on yourself. That's what got you to this place. And so now here we get to teach and train and work with people every day to help them find this for themselves.
Well, I think that's a good point because I think there's a balance, right? That there's the balance of understanding ourselves. And so there's going to be emotional intelligence, there's going to be self awareness, attentional focus is a topic that I talk about quite a bit. But we also need to realize that just because it's all about us from that standpoint, there is also help out there. So there's podcasts like this one. There's the books that I read. So even though you say, yes, from my bio, I might have done a lot of self work, but that wasn't because I didn't read a lot of the books from people who had already published all of
Yeah.
this stuff or talked to other people and picked out the information or watched a bunch of TED Talks or videos or courses and stuff. So there's that balance between the work that we do and understanding our individual, our self-awareness and how we want to present and all of those types of things internally with how to piece it together with the external bricks that come into our world through all of the media and all of the other types of things that we consume. So yes, I think there's both.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, self-work doesn't, just like we've been talking about through this whole thing, self-work doesn't mean you're doing it alone.
Right.
Some of it is alone. Like I can't do your work for you, but we can do it together. You can get my support. And likewise, right? I receive support from other people when I'm doing my work. And that goes for our internal deep work that we're talking about here. That also goes for our work. Right? other stuff we do in the world. So it's
Yeah.
so interesting to me that we keep coming back to this social aspect of it.
Why?
It's just interesting.
Okay.
I mean, why is it interesting? For me, it is interesting because there is something I do strongly believe in the power of community.
Okay.
And we can define community in a multitude of ways, right? This is a community right here. We've created a small community container for today. And so however you want to define community, there is tremendous power in that. And when we're doing this work, again, whether it's our work that we're getting paid for or the work that's internal, we do tend to go back to very much. And it was interesting because at the beginning of the conversation, we're talking about, we've come through this phase of this very individualistic, this very focused on the individual. And yet, cosmically speaking, we've actually come through almost 400 years of being focused on the institution. And so, but you're not wrong about this idea of the individual, because we have been focused on how we as an individual can excel, can show up in the world, can do the thing, versus how we as an individual can be connected to the whole. And that's the phase that we're going into. So when we say that we've moved through this period of focusing on institutions and we're focusing now on the individual, we're not talking about it in that scary me first way. We're talking about it as the individual, as part of community. That's why it's interesting to me. That was a really deep rabbit hole though.
No, that was I think that was great. That's why I asked. It's like it could have gone in all sorts of directions, and my brain was actually going in a different direction. So I'm really glad that you clarified. While at the same time, like I don't want people to take my harshness of the individual as something you shouldn't do. I think that's something really important. So I like to use the metaphor of the chain, right? Like if you have this whole world is just a chain full of people. And so it's an 8 billion chain link chain. And if you aren't as strong as you can be, then you are the weakest link. And so then if you aren't as strong as an individual as you can be, then you're going to break the chain for the rest of the world. So so don't take like the individual work that a lot of people have done as like, oh, it was a waste of time or we shouldn't have done it. Like you should absolutely do individual work because you need to be as strong as you can be for everyone else around you. I just think that we just need to start to make that transition into the social world where now that you are a strong person with your individual internal work, share that with other people so that they can see, an example or they can learn from you as well. And so that we can kind of build a much bigger community.
I had to parse through those words. No, because just because there is a lot of inherent, there's a lot of us, and I will put myself in this bucket too, who we've carried more of our weight and we've been stronger than anybody has ever given us credit for. And we're tired and we don't want to be strong anymore. And so parsing through those words, I don't disagree with what you're saying. And it was at that, and it just probably other people listening as well. Sometimes it's hard for us to hear things and to listen to things fully to try and understand, because I think we are probably not very far from each other in terms of our viewpoint on this. And yet that idea of having somebody say, I need to be the strongest I can be, otherwise I'm the weakest link. It's like, oh, I don't want to be either.
I see. So yes, I think, again, another great way that you showed me how my words didn't necessarily land. So the caveat of being as strong as you can be is very, very important. You can be. So to your point, yes, I completely understand the exhaustion and I completely understand the whole overflowing of a pitcher and pouring too much water into your glass. And I don't want that for anybody. And that's why that last few words to me is very important, as you can be, right? Is that I want you all to be strong, but not but not pushing yourself into all the other things, as Kim had pointed out. Like, she's exhausted, can't do it anymore. And I totally empathize with that. So please don't do that. And please don't take my words as that. My words were very much an individual thing, so that we can be strong for everyone else. Because to your point, if you give too much to everybody else, you're exhausted, and then it actually backfires, and we're actually in the wrong position.
Yep.
But if we're as strong as we can be, then we're always there for other people at our level, at the level we want to be at. And so then that's when we can keep our this humanity chain as strong as it can be. So
See, I knew we weren't far.
Right.
Yeah. and we get caught. So here we are talking about, right, how we belong in this social space and how community can support and really help us, right? And that's the place that we get our strength from sometimes. And it has a shadow side, right? If we find ourselves surrounded by people that, right, are full of pushing energy or competitive or all of these things, then we, like Doug said, like we can't be as strong as we can be because we are trying to be something else that we're not. We're trying to live up to expectations or other standards that actually aren't in alignment with our values. When we talk about that's the inner work and being in touch with who we are, that we get grounded in a place that we can actually be strong for ourselves. It's not this external, right? Like Kim, like I almost can feel it like a weight, right? That gets put on us or we put on ourselves sometimes because it's pushing and pushing and pushing to, right, have a great job, get all the stuff, do all the crap that we think we need to do. And that's not what any of us are talking about when we talk about strength. We're talking about it coming back to self, and self and community. Like it plays, and it's a balance, a flow, a harmony that we look for. Making sure that we have a community of people that can support us, not a community of people that pull from us, right? So it's all the stuff.
Yeah. It's the push on us. I'm really thinking of systems of oppression, really
Yeah.
like, right? That when we're talking about systems of oppression and being in a place where being strong, it comes from just existing. And so just having that understanding that was where I was feeling that from, is that place
Mhm.
of with systems of oppression and being felt that I've already just by existing, right? And I'm speaking a little bit from my own personal experience and a lot from experience from people in my world. It's that's a hard place to be, and to be told like be strong. So I think Doug, you did a beautiful job of really talking about where like how you meant that, and I appreciate you going there because I thought it was very important that what you were saying be heard in the totality. So thanks for playing along.
No, you're helping me clarify, and that's great too. And one thing about Louise's is the idea that this is where I get really, excited about the whole social side of things and the social intelligence and the social psychology, because to your point, there's all this pressure and there's all this oppression. And if we can't understand that, then how do we attack it or how do we fight it from our internal side? And so that's where I think, again, where I've come from for my trainings and other things like that, this is where I focus on that social aspect of it, is that once we do, we can understand oppression, we can understand groupthink, we can understand conformity and all of those other things that are pressing down on us. So again, if that's a struggle, that's why I encourage more of those topics on the social psychology side of things to help us be happier.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, I just looked at the time. That was a really fast 45 minutes. It was, hopefully it was for you as well. Getting poked and prodded. I do it from love. It has been a fantastic conversation. When we're talking about this happiness equation, I'd love to have us each share our little golden nuggets from this conversation. Like, what is it that we want to make sure people heard, particularly with this idea of creating a happiness equation for themselves?
Shall I go first?
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
So for me, and what I again hope to share with other people, hopefully my words are clear and understandable, um, is that it's more than just ourselves, and it's more than just emotional intelligence and the other things that we've been kind of bombarded with over the last few decades. And to really think about how, when we do all that work, how we come out into the social world and how we can build a community, how we can help each other out, and how we can have more patience for all of the other people that are kind of putting all of that pressure and that force down on us. That kind of makes us feel a little icky, and that it's not necessarily their fault, but I think that the social aspect is a big part of everyone's happiness.
Yeah.
Nicely said.
Yes. And that coming back to self, like we talked a lot today about our values and about understanding like who we are and what makes us happy, and finding that again for many, and reconnecting, which it's interesting because we think individual, like self, and social are opposite, yet I don't think so at all. And that's also part of the equation, is like that values and coming back to self, really understanding who you are and what's important, is also a part of the happiness equation, I think. Kim, what do you think?
Well, it's so funny because it totally ties into that brain baby that was getting born over here. It's about self-mastery. It's about totally understanding ourselves, and understanding ourselves in the context of any community that we go into, and whatever is happening outside of ourselves, and giving ourselves that opportunity to create our happiness equation through self-mastery, through understanding, and totally taking that agency and ownership back of ourselves, that most of us didn't even know really existed. Like, we think we're living this self-directed life, and then we look around and we go, oh, I made a whole bunch of decisions and plans and led my life in a way that isn't actually in alignment with anything I feel inside. So
Yeah.
that's where I hope that people were able to take away. And because I think we hit so many of the topics that are aligned with that in this conversation today. So
Yeah,
good stuff. Doug, where can people find you in the world if they want to continue this conversation?
You can find me using my name, so Doug Barna. That's kind of where my website starts, and acclaimedsummit.com. And I'm primarily on LinkedIn under my name, Doug Barna, and also on YouTube under my name, Doug Barna. So I would love for you guys to reach out and let me know that you heard about me on this podcast too, so that we can talk more about the happiness equation. That'd be great.
Yeah, I love it. Doug, thanks so much for coming down this windy road today. It was a fantastic conversation, and I love it. And you are actually in a very unique place. You are our last kick-ass career conversation guest for some
live guest.
Live guest for some time, because Kim and I are actually going to be taking a bit of a break. You can find out more about what's going on next week, but we are going to be on hiatus for a few weeks, coming back live in September, right? July, September. I do
We'll give
know
you the
what's going
details
on.
next week.
More
She does
details
know.
to come. I do know.
She
I
does know.
forget sometimes, but I know.
It's okay. This is what we're talking about next week. It's like the shortest little crawl that goes across. Next week, transitions.
Transitions is what we're talking about, and what we're up to. So do that. Please follow, like, share, and drop by. And yeah, we have such a great message, Doug. What a great conversation today. So listeners, just keep tuning in, and we'll have more great conversations. Just it'll look different. because we're going through a transition.
It's true, because
Right.
we're following our own happiness equation.
Ooh,
Look,
nice
see what I
tie-in.
did there? You're
Ties it
welcome.
in the time. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in this week, and we will chat soon.
Okay, everyone. See you next week. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.